Good morning, everyone. My name, of course, is Artimage, and welcome to day 2 of VEDA 2018, vlogging every day in April, where this year I'm going a little more into myself and what I do here. So, as I alluded to yesterday, we're going to be talking a little more about the influence tabletop and analog games had in my growing up. Now, to say that tabletop games had much influence on me growing up is a little bit misleading. Mostly because I just did not have the opportunity to experience things in the tabletop realm beyond what you could find at places like Toys R Us or Walmart or Zellers, because that was a thing here in Canada. The most game that I experienced when I was growing up was a guy I lived near and was friends with had Hero Quest, and that was kind of obviously introduction to dungeon crawls and RPGs, and I got interested enough where I wanted to write modules for it, but didn't have enough reference materials to do so. I experienced Magic the Gathering shortly after it was released, but I did not really have the opportunity to get into that. So my first real opportunity at experiencing anything as would become my interest in tabletop still came through digital means. That friend I mentioned who had Hero Quest had found a downloadable version of Magic the Gathering, which gave me my first real opportunity to play the game. My first real experience with Dungeons & Dragons came in the form of Baldur's Gate. And though I'd obviously heard of D&D before, I didn't understand what the Dungeon Master was, or where your rules came from, or what you needed to play, or anything. I finally got my first real look at it with the 3.5 edition, come around 2003. And I saw a lot of potential for it, though it was obviously designed primarily as a dungeon crawl, given its name and how the mechanics were focused upon. Now, sometime before Baldur's Gate in the digital version of Magic the Gathering, I had played this one Super Nintendo RPG, Shadowrun. And it turned out, obviously, that Shadowrun was based on another role-playing game property come from circa 1985. And I didn't discover that one until I was almost already in college. I had a lot of things that I discovered I needed to catch up on. Now, for about 6 months in 2003, I was fortunate enough to date a girl who was a little younger than me, but had an older sister, significantly older than both of us, who was well engrossed in this general geek community. She was a role player, she was involved in cosplay and conventions. And so it got me a real look at what more was out there. I got to go to Fan Expo in 2003. It was a good first experience. Following Fan Expo that same year, there was TorCon 3. Now, that is a infrequent convention in that it's one that travels, apparently. I wanted to find something more related to my interests. So I was looking to others out there, none of which I actually got the chance to go to as they started closing down too, and just between lack of disposable income and easy means of transit, a lot of it was really barred off to me. But back to the matters at hand. Most of my real chance and experience with tabletop gaming came from and after college. At TorCon 3, one of my girlfriend at the time's friends was one of the outriders for Games Workshop, the people who used to demo them. And he gave us our first glimpse into Warhammer 40k, which I had never seen or heard of anything like that in my life, and the fact that there was actual involvement, even when it's not your turn, was very phenomenal to me. It's one of the big things that drew me to Magic, and it drew me certainly to this game, even if it was just you making saves and counter charges and counterattacks in Melee. I got my first real chance at playing 40k in 2011, and I got pretty heavily invested until really examining what the company was doing with the game and their community, and it has driven me off, and it's apparently better, but it's not what I'm looking for anymore. Along the way, I discovered War Machine and Hordes, which has an amazing world, but the gameplay did not strike me the same way, but it drew me more than Warhammer simply because the game was obviously better designed for balance. That game has also gone in directions that I personally do not find enjoyable, so have taken a step back from. I haven't gotten out of it the same way. I'm hoping that maybe I'll see more of the game that I wanted out of it. And of course, it's my primary, and another one that I've become a member of in an officiating capacity, Infinity. I mean, I often introduce Infinity to people who are unfamiliar with it as if Magic the Gathering was a miniatures game. Not because of the theme or style directly. Obviously, Infinity is sci-fi, whereas Magic is fantasy, but you're not ever taken out of the game. You have assets on the board, you have things you can do. So things like that just really stand out to me as big positives. Now, of course, board games became a big part of what I do as well. I remember finding Carcassonne and the Settlers of Catan on the Xbox Live Arcade, and I gave the demos a shot and became enamored with their ideas, so I bought them both. And eventually Catan became very much not a me-style game, so it has sat idle on my library ever since. Carcassonne I still find enjoyment of. Come 2007, 2008, I was discovering more of these styles of games, and one of the big draws that really got me looking more towards board games was an immense 4X masterpiece that is Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition. The concept of the modular board was amazing. The fact that it encompassed so many things done so well was astounding. My closest comparison and understanding came, as many people's would, in Sid Meier's Civilization. This was basically that set in space on a tabletop. Now, yes, obviously since then I've become aware of Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri / Alien Crossfire. I had not had the chance to learn of these games before either. By detecting the pattern that there was a lot going on in gaming geekery that I was not privy to. Obviously, since discovering these things, a lot of them have become staples in my life, a lot of them have become games I've dabbled in, a lot of them have become heavy investments. So that's really all I can think of on a background point of view. So what we're going to do going forward for the next at least couple of days, we're going to focus more heavily on some of these games and systems that I got heavily involved with and why they were such a draw to me. And in cases where they aren't anymore, what they've done that didn't stick with my taste as I grew. So I figured the best way to start with that is we'll go with the first game that I got heavily involved with, being Dungeons & Dragons, starting with 3.5 and my progression thereof. So we have that to look forward to tomorrow, and I want to thank you all so much for joining me on today's video. Sorry I'm so washed out looking, it's obviously very early in the morning. I wanted to make sure I got this recorded and seen to before I got sidetracked by my long day. So until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and each other, and I will talk to you soon.